In our mind that we couldn't touch the support boat, and so when we needed to reach out and push away, we didn't. And a lot of times in life, I see the same thing where we get distracted by little things that really don't matter, and it ends up impeding our ultimate goal. And that can happen in business, it can happen just in life in general. When I think of returning to our Father in heaven, sometimes it's these little things that distract us, that keep us from getting to the other side alive. And so I want to share a little bit about some of my own life journeys and experiences since the time I was a student here, just 13 years ago, not that long ago. I had hair at the time, so I'm sure 13 years from now some of you might look a little different, but it wasn't that long ago since I was here. My journey really began, some of my first memories were when my family left the United States. And when I was 4 years old, my family moved to the Dominican Republic. And it was some of my very first memories that really kind of shaped who I've become. I remember looking out the window of our car and seeing children that were 3 or 4 years old, that were my age, that were completely naked. And that was shocking to me. I knew as a child that something wasn't right. And that ended up becoming something that I saw over my entire childhood as we lived in a number of different countries. And I had a large family. We ended up having 8 children in my family, and we didn't have a ton of money, but my dad was an adventurer, and so we always had some crazy trip planned. Sometimes it was floating down the Amazon River in a raft that we made, and then we fishing for piranha, or climbing in the Andes into volcanic craters, or being dropped off in the Caribbean off little islands, swimming to shore with our gear, and then using our own homemade spears to hunt for and spear fish. So I grew up loving the outdoors and also loving different cultures and different languages in the world. And so when I came to BYU, I decided to continue that pursuit of learning more about the world, about international affairs, about international development and global trade. And I started by doing an internship that I found through the Kennedy Center. And it was an internship in Peru that my wife and I did together. And it was there that we had an experience that really shaped me. We were in Cusco, and we arrived there, and the first thing we did is we sat on this park bench and we started eating lunch. And as we were there, a number of little kids ran up to us and tried to sell us things. Postcards and finger puppets and candy. And there was one little boy that sat next to us on his shoe shining kit. And because I'd grown up in Latin America, I immediately connected with these little kids. And after a while, they all kind of ran off, but the one little boy sitting on his shoe shining kit continued to sit next to us. And pretty soon I realized that he might be sitting next to us because he was hungry. He kept insisting that he wanted to shine my shoes, but I was wearing tennis shoes, so that wasn't going to happen. And I ended up offering him my food, and that ended up becoming a daily ritual. We ended up looking for Edgar every day. And it was a touching experience for us to get to know him and to have this little relationship built with this little boy. Our last night in Cusco, as we were walking home, we ended up stumbling upon Edgar as he was sleeping on the streets. And someone had stolen his shoe shining kit, and he was too afraid to go home. And so we ended up giving him the little cash that we had, and that night we could hardly sleep as we worried about this little boy and what would become of him. The next day we got on a bus to leave Cusco for the last time, and as we were on this bus, we looked out the window and we saw Edgar, and he had a big bag of candy in one arm, and he was now selling that bag of candy in the streets. And he ran next to the bus waving goodbye to us as we drove away. And it was on that bus that we made a commitment to each other that we would find a way to use our lives to help children like Edgar. So I came back to BYU and started exploring what I could do. And I ultimately decided that I wanted to pursue a path of entrepreneurship. a mentor of mine named Steve Gibson had told me that if I really wanted to make a difference in the world, I could do it through entrepreneurship. So I went off and I started my first business, and it was a pretty random business. I'm not really a pool player, but I found that there was an opportunity to go build something that hadn't really been built before, and that was a business where we sold pool tables and we sold them online. So I went to China for the first time. I studied about China when I was in school, and that's kind of how I had the idea in the first place. And so I did a few Google searches, pool table factory, China, and some results came up, and that's where we ended up going. So we started making our own pool tables and selling them online, and then eventually started opening up physical retail stores around the country. And so I did that for about 6 years, and the business went well. So we ended up selling the business, and I decided I didn't want to be the pool table guy forever, so I went back to graduate school to try to learn what I did well, what I could have done better, and what I could do differently. And so I started pursuing my next business. And I ultimately ended up deciding to move to Brazil. Moving back down to Latin America where I'd grown up and where I'd served my mission. I didn't know Portuguese, I hadn't lived in Brazil, but I knew it was a massive economy that was exploding and felt like there was an opportunity for me to build a meaningful business there. So my cousin and I moved down to Brazil, and we ended up starting a business called baby.com.br and another business called jinda.com.br. And these businesses quickly began to grow. So we went from 4 employees to 300 employees in 18 months. We ended up being Brazil's startup of the year in 2012. And in a lot of ways, it was a dream come true. It was everything that I wanted. I was back in Latin America. My 2 daughters were speaking Portuguese. I was building a really cool business. At the same time, there was a piece of me that knew I needed to leave. And I thought back to that experience that my wife and I had with Edgar, that little shoe-shining boy. And I knew I needed to do something more meaningful. So I ended up leaving my role as co-CEO of the business and moving back to the United States to try to build something that I felt could make a difference in the world. And the idea was that I believed if I could build a business that could inspire people to do good, I could make a much bigger impact than if I just did something on my own. So I went to Silicon Valley and started pitching to investors this idea of building a business that did good, and where we thought of how our business could impact people in every possible way. And so we ended up raising venture capital to go start this business, and I moved back to Utah, and we ended up, over the last 2 years, have built something that's been just an amazing experience to be a part of. And so I want to share a couple short videos that will kind of explain to you some of the things that we're doing that are unique with this brand.
We're in the Philippines right now. We've been working specifically on the production of a new product of ours called the Daldia, a backpack designed by the sewers of the factory. They're responsible for choosing everything from the thread color to the fabric colors, the colorway of the backpack. The only instruction we gave them was that no bags should be alike.
We choose those colors because we think that those colors, when matched together, will result with a nice bag.
It's made from excess material, so this is material that's either going to go to a landfill or just sit on the shelf. We decided to incorporate that into a bag.
The most exciting part on the Daldia is the process. Each person has its own free will to pick the colors. They can apply what they are feeling that day to create the bag.
What's your favorite color combination?
Violet and red.
The Daldia is special because when the customer buys it, they're actually buying a one-off product. It was custom made.
maganda.
So, anong kulay ang pinakagusto mo dyan sa colour?
Gusto ko yung red, kasi sign ng love yun. Yung mga Pilipino kasi mapagmahal masyado yan eh.
Gusto ko mga dark color eh. Parang masayang tingnan ba? Nakakaalis ng stress, nakakaalis ng pagod. Pag nakita mo talaga yung bag, pag yung mga dark color na ganun, napapatawa ka na. Talaga napapa-smile ka na.
It shows how creative people can be when given the chance. All we did was give them the opportunity to do something special, and they excelled at it. It was cool to see them kind of let go for a little while and just have fun while they're working. The function of product design is to make people happy, and I believe that it can make people happy on both sides of the equation. It can make people in the supply chain happy, and it can make people in the consumer chain happy. And I think the Daldia proves that that can happen.
So this is one really cool example of how we think about how we can use our business to do good. And so one of the things is we use our purchasing power and our supply chain to be able to impact lives. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. We have developed social and educational programs at this factory as well. So we're really creating an opportunity for these workers to have more meaning in the work they do, and that they can develop skills that can help pull them out of poverty. If you actually come up to, we have a physical retail store in downtown Salt Lake, you can actually go there and put on a virtual reality headset, and you can actually go meet one of our sewers, Reynaldo. He'll take you through his little village in the Philippines, you'll meet his family, and you kind of hear the story of how this job enabled them to have enough money where his wife was able to go back to university and become a teacher. And so it's really been cool to see how our business can impact lives in a number of different ways. The next story I want to share here is also has to do with our supply chain. And this one's special to me because I grew up for part of my childhood in the Andes, and then I served my mission in Bolivia. And this story is about how we're using our supply chain in Bolivia to actually make an impact in lives there.
Es de bastante importancia la llama. Con eso compramos mercaderías, alimentación y educación para los hijos. O sea, aquí vivimos desde los abuelos que han vivido hace más de 500 años, debe ser, los abuelos que han vivido, ¿no? Y siempre no nos vamos a olvidar nuestro campo, donde los abuelos, papás han vivido. Siempre van a estar generación y generación. Yo sé que a un tiempo mis hijos también estarán aquí.
You know, growing up in South America, I saw llama wool and llama fiber being used constantly, and it was the fiber they used for thousands of years. So it's been interesting to see how underdeveloped this industry is, despite having been around for so long. And we're just barely kind of tapping the surface about how we can have the greatest impact on the livelihoods and lives of these individuals living in the Andes.
Well, I love the Coosa jacket because it is a story that keeps on giving. And so it has this traditional exterior, but technical fabrics, amazing colors. And instead of just putting polyester or down insulation in it, I wanted to dig a little bit deeper to see what other natural fibers are out there. I knew it worked technically, but now to see how it can work with building and preserving communities completely changed me as a designer and how I want to design future products.
I think one of the most powerful parts of the Cotopaxi brand is this connection of product to people. And one thing that we're hoping to accomplish is to allow people, as they're wearing one of our products, to actually feel a connection with an individual that lives in Bolivia. So I love this story because first of all, you got to see the jackets. They're beautiful. They're these super urban kind of jackets, and then the insulation inside, instead of using down or a synthetic material, we're using llama wool. So it's this beautiful jacket. It's supporting livelihoods, and who doesn't want a jacket full of llama wool? So you know, it's this really cool combination of a product that tells a great story, that impacts lives, and that's also good for business, which allows us to continue to do good. Last story here, last video I'm gonna share is a video about the Questival. Has anyone here done the Questival? All right, a few of you. That's great. So, 3 times? Who did 3 times? Yes, love you. All right, so so the Questival is pretty cool. The first one we did on the day of our launch. So the day we turned on our website, we also did the first Questival. And it was, I'll tell you, it was terrifying because we spent $100,000 to put together this first event. It was really expensive, and we didn't even know if anyone would even show up. No one knew who Cotopaxi was. And all we did to kind of spread the word about it was we went and bought 2 llamas on KSL Classifieds, and we showed up on college campuses with these llamas. And I remember coming on BYU campus with these llamas, just waiting to get kicked off campus. Of course, we didn't ask for permission. Pretty soon, about an hour in, we'd had like some people from like the universe come and do like a story that it was like this, they wanted to know why the llamas were on campus. There were hundreds of students gathered around taking selfies with these llamas, asking why we were there, and we were telling about this event. And pretty soon campus security walked up and we're like, oh, here it is, you know, we're getting kicked out. And they started taking selfies with the llama and then walked off. It was like, this is crazy, I love this. So llamas have this magical power. And I really realized we had something special when I showed up to the first Questival. And we had, at that point we did it a little differently, but we had 3 checkpoints, check-in points, where you got your backpack and you started the event. And one of them was here in Provo. So I came to the one in Provo as a BYU alum. I wanted to be here. And I parked my car and I was running to this check-in point, and I saw this line that was like a block and a half long. And I saw people wearing Cotopaxi shirts and hats. We hadn't even sold anything yet. The website literally had just been turned on. People had made their own homemade Cotopaxi gear. And there was like this Jeep, and you guys may have seen it around, it has like our llama like spray painted on the hood and on the back of it on the doors. And it's like, I wouldn't even do that to my own car. So that's when I was like, okay, we've really kind of tapped into something special here. So we started doing these Questivals all over the country. We're doing 50 of them next year, all throughout the US and Canada, and we're going to start expanding globally as well. But here's a quick video that kind of explains a little bit about the Questival. And you'll see in this as well that we can use the Questival. One of the things that I like most about this is that we can ask our loyal brand followers to go out and do good. And so just this year alone, we've ended up having thousands of hours of community service done. We've had tens of thousands of pieces of garbage picked up off trails and parks. And it's just been a really amazing event. So I'll go ahead and play the video. So this was it ended up being a huge success for us, and it ended up becoming a way that we really enabled us to go build this brand globally. And so something that we're super excited to continue, and if you guys haven't done a Questival, you need to try one out. We're actually doing one next weekend in Salt Lake. So you can go check out our website and go sign up, put together a team. I promise you it'll be the coolest 24 hours you've probably ever experienced. So So I want to do a quick exercise here. I want everyone to close your eyes. Okay? Everyone close your eyes, no peeking. And I want everyone to think about a number. And it's going to be a number between 1 and 100. And it's going to represent the number of people that live in poverty in 1820. So imagine for a second that you're in the year 1820. What percentage of people are living in poverty? Keep your eyes closed, don't open. I want people to raise their hands with your eyes closed. If you think at least 10% of the world is living in poverty, raise your hand. Okay, if you think at least 20% was living in poverty, raise your hand. Okay, keep them up. 30%. 40%. 50%. 60%. Okay, keep your hands up if you think it's over 60%. How many people think 70% of the world's population lived in poverty? 80%. 90%. Okay, keep your hands there, those that still have them up, and then everyone open your eyes, look at those people around you. Those people are right. 94% of the world's population was living in poverty in 1820. And if you fast forward just until the year I was born, 1978, it was about 50%. By 1990, it was 37%. By the year 2010, it was 16%. This is people living in extreme poverty, which is under $1.90 a day in today's equivalent. And then last year, for the first time in human history, less than 10% of the world's population was living in extreme poverty. This is an extraordinary time. And it's amazing that we get to live in this time of the world's history where we get to see this happen. And the cool thing is that we all get to be a part of this. And you guys get to make a contribution to ending extreme poverty in your lifetimes. That's possible. But for it to be possible, we all have to do our part. And so some of us are going to go into the nonprofit world. Some of us are going to be in international development. Others are going to be part of corporate social responsibility efforts within corporations. But it's all these efforts together, along with government, that we can end extreme poverty in our lifetimes. So some of you may be wondering what ended up happening with Edgar, the little shoe-shining boy that I met in 2001. I've wondered the same thing. What became of him? Did he have a chance to go to school? Well, about a year ago, I decided to find out. So I went back to Peru for the first time to look for Edgar. And I knew nothing about him. I knew he was 9 years old. I knew his name was Edgar. I knew he shined shoes. That's it. But I had a picture of him. So I flew into Cusco, and the first thing I did is I went to the main plaza. And immediately I started showing people this picture of Edgar and asking if they knew who it was. And before long, there was this mob of people gathered around me, 60 or 70 people, wondering why this tall, bald gringo was speaking Spanish. And in the crowd, there was a young man who stepped up and said, "I know who that is. I grew up shining shoes with him in the streets. We sold candy together, and we both still work in the streets selling paintings." And as we talked more, I realized that it was likely true that he did know who this was. So we walked over to a payphone, and he first was the first person to talk, and he said, "Edgar, there's this gringo that has a picture of you from when you were a kid." And that's when I kind of realized for the first time, they'd never even seen pictures of themselves as children. They didn't have cameras. And I got on the phone and I told him, "Edgar, there's no way you're going to remember who I am, but you may remember that night when you were 9 years old when someone stole your shoe shiny kit." And there was silence on the other end for a second, and he said, "Are you the one that gave me money to help me buy a new shoe shiny kit?" So this was in the evening. The next morning, we met up on the cathedral steps, which is the last place I saw him as he ran next to the bus. And it was one of the most emotional moments of my life. We embraced each other, we shared, we spent the day together. He took me to a small home. He had been orphaned just a few years after I met him. His dad died of alcohol abuse. His mom died giving birth to his younger brother. And so he was now raising his little sister and his little brother in a little home he'd built made of mud with a hole in the ground for a latrine. And there was a piece of me that was so discouraged to see how he was living. But at the same time, he was so proud of what he'd built. He was so anxious to show it to me. And because of that, I was proud for him. And he had so much hope and optimism for the future. And so fortunately, I'm able to keep in touch with Edgar frequently because he's one of the most active Facebook users on the planet. And I've been able to help him go through a program. He's taken a 3-year program learning how to be a tour guide. And he speaks beautiful English now. He's worked in the streets for so long with tourists that he's learned English. He knows the streets of Cusco better than anyone. So I'm confident he's going to be the best tour guide in Peru. And it's just been such a blessing for me to meet this young man. Edgar put me on a path that really changed my entire life. And so my question for you guys is, who is your Edgar? And what can you do today to make the world a better place? Thank you.
So before we go to questions, I know you have lots of questions. We wanted to announce the Kennedy Metro Cotopaxi Challenge winner. We thought this would be a good time. So Davis, why don't you tell us a little bit about what the winner will receive and how this kind of ties into what we've been doing all week.
Yeah, so hopefully a lot of you have been participating in this, like going around campus, taking pictures of yourselves, doing different things. The idea is hopefully that this is inspiring you to go out and do things outside of Provo, outside of campus. It was one of these internships that I did as a student that really changed my life. And so we were broke. I remember the highlight of our week, every week, was we bought this little package of Oreos. I had 4 Oreos. My wife and I, every other day, would split an Oreo as Oreo Day. Like, that's how broke we were. And we still did this internship. So there's no excuses about not being able to afford an internship, even if you're married. So find a way to do these kind of experiences because they'll change your life forever. So Corey was kind of talking to me about what could we do. So we gave a few prizes throughout the week, and then we kind of have a grand prize. So let me show you what they are. So one is this duffel bag. It's a pretty cool travel duffel bag. It turns into a backpack. And then inside we've got some other stuff here. So we have Luzon del Dia, which is like those bags that you saw where every one of them is unique. I picked out one that I thought was cool. These are awesome for traveling because they don't take up any room in your bag, and then you have a day pack during the day, or they're great for day hiking. We have a DOP kit, a travel kit, so you can put your toiletries or travel cords and stuff like that in it. Great for traveling. Also a del Dia, so every one of these is unique. And then a really cool backpack that's also turns into a duffel bag, so these straps tuck away. And then one thing that's kind of cool about this backpack is that it actually it has a laptop sleeve and everything, but when you open it opens up like a suitcase, and so you can actually an awesome bag for kind of short travel trips. So this is the grand prize that we're going to be handing out. So
right now. So for those who weren't participating in the Kennedy Metro Challenge, there's a brand new poster in the Kennedy Center this semester. It was designed by the London-based designer Mark Ovenden. He imagined what the world would look like if the world was connected by a subway, by a metro. And we reached out to him a few years ago and obtained permission to reproduce and to use his image. He actually updated the design a little bit. If you've wondered why certain cities are featured on the Kennedy Metro poster, it's because those are cities that have a public transportation system. So that's it says it in the fine print, but that's sort of the rubric behind it. So that was the starting point. We also asked you to stop by the Study Abroad office in 101, which is the place where all of your academic experiences off campus begin. You can pick up flyers, you can talk with our student staff, you can basically get connected and find out all the things you need to do to go abroad all around the world, as Davis did and as we hope you will. We encourage you to go to the major fair because the Kennedy Center sponsors academic majors and minors that help students study about the world and go in greater depth. And then we asked you to go to one of your favorite Provo international restaurants and take a picture of your food. And those were the funnest pictures to see because we have some great options in Utah County. And so it was good to see where you're eating. You're eating well. Better than an Oreo, perhaps. And then, obviously, you're here today. So we're pleased to announce that our winner of the Kennedy Metro Challenge is Emily Carr. Is Emily here?
Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah,
front
first row. Yeah.
With the remaining few minutes we have before you have to make the dash to class, we'd like to just open up the floor for questions.
Let's do it.
If you don't mind, because of the podcast, I will ask you to come down. That's a little scary. Come down to this microphone, and then tell us your name and what you're studying. We just have just 5 minutes to ask questions of Davis before we wrap up. While people are kind of making their way down, Davis, talk to us a little bit about your decision to start your company in Utah. Again, especially as students are getting close to graduation or thinking about what comes next, we see a lot of our alumni are jumping in with Utah companies and are taking advantage of what seems to be a very dynamic market for both technology, in terms of trade, and in terms of other sectors. Obviously, you had Utah connections, but what are some of your thoughts about starting Cotopaxi?
Yeah, great question. So my last business was in Brazil. So when I was deciding to start Cotopaxi, I really could start it anywhere. I was kind of looking at the Bay Area, where we spent a little bit of time. It's obviously an epicenter for entrepreneurship. We looked at Seattle, where my wife is from, and we also looked at Utah. As an outdoor gear brand, these three places seemed like great places to go start a business. And ultimately, we decided on Utah because the access to the outdoors is unlike anywhere else in the country. There's also an amazing amount of startup activity happening here. Every year, as you kind of look at rankings of where venture investors are coming to invest money, Utah is in the top 5 or 6 places in the country. There's investors from Silicon Valley flying out here every single week to meet with startups, looking to invest in Utah companies. So it just seemed like a great place to be. Also, it's affordable. So when I looked at the Bay Area, that's very, very expensive to start a business in, I just felt like this was the right place for us. So there's a lot of great places you can start businesses, but I think Utah is absolutely a fantastic place. And I'm glad we started here. We saw Utah as really kind of a way to incubate our brand and test things, and then we scale things that work globally. So it's been great. Yeah.
I'm Jonathan Engel from Provo, Utah, studying entrepreneurship.
All right.
And big fan. I guess my question is, how have you best, what would be your advice on how to innovate and find problems? Because that's a big part of entrepreneurship is, find a problem and then do something about it.
Yeah.
To be able to combine that with a social cause as well, what would you give on that?
Yeah, it's a great question. So first of all, tackle the social cause issue. It took me 10 years to figure out how to build a social mission into a brand and into a business. It's hard. I don't know that I could have done it when I first started. In fact, my first 2 attempts at business were with businesses that had social missions, and they failed. They did not work. And that's ultimately ended up kind of putting those aside for a little while, started the first business, the pool table business. And first kind of learned how to build a business. And then I kind of learned how to integrate a social mission. So I would say, don't forget about the desire you have to do good. Find ways that you can do that throughout your life. But don't feel like you have to go start a business that, from the get-go, that's out changing the world. Because it's hard enough to start a business in the first place. Maybe first use the first experience to just learn how to build a business, how to build a team, make mistakes. And then find ways that you can kind of plug things in little by little that can make the world better. And then hopefully over time you'll learn how to do that even more. As far as solving problems and innovating, my advice here is to be disciplined about that approach. Is anyone here interested in entrepreneurship? How many people have kind of thought it might be fun to start my own business at some point? Maybe a third of you. It's really fun, by the way. One of my favorite quotes is a quote from Dieter Uchtdorf, and he says, "The desire to create is one of the deepest yearnings of the human soul." It's something that's inside of us, to build stuff. It might be business, it might be music or art or other things, but it's something that we have inside of us. And so my advice on innovation is be disciplined about your approach. Put aside maybe 6 months where you can think of as many ideas as possible. Don't feel pressure to jump into the first or fifth idea that you have to go start building something. Come up with as many ideas as possible. If you come up with 50 or 60 or 70 ideas, I promise one of those ideas is going to be really good. And then it's just a matter of cutting those ideas down, testing them, vetting them, and identifying which.
Entrepreneurs, business leaders for like that common goal of like bettering people's lives.
Yeah. Great question. What's your major?
So it's applied physics, material science.
Okay, you're much smarter than I am. We need guys like you. So my advice is to look for ways that you can start connecting with people studying business. Join the entrepreneurship club. I know that there's a great entrepreneurship club at the business school. They need people like you, people in sciences, and oftentimes it's partnering up with someone that's really business-minded and someone that has an ability to build things and create things that you actually create often the best teams. And so my advice would be is to start connecting with people, network. The more people you can talk to, the better. I think the tendency is if you have an idea to not want to tell anyone so they don't steal your idea. Wrong answer. Like the most important thing is just talk about your idea with everybody. And if everyone knows that that's your idea, no one's going to steal it because they're going to be embarrassed because everyone knows it's your idea. So talk about it. That's how you're going to get feedback as well about how to make it better. That's how you're going to meet people that can help you build it. So yeah, great question. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Marissa Gantz. I'm a sociology major with an emphasis in social business, social innovation.
Great.
So this is everything I love. Preface my question, as one of the first, B Corps in Utah, and still kind of testing out the waters of, B Corps, how have you been so successful with that? One, because it is so untested. I've heard a lot of business people say, oh, it's a scary idea for a startup.
Yeah.
And also, especially with your recent, the biggest funding that anyone has ever gotten for B Corp and C Day. Just how have you made that successful?
Yeah, great question. So for those of you that don't know, a B Corp or a benefit corporation is an entity, it's a for-profit entity, but that makes a legal commitment to use their business to do good and to make decisions not just based on profit, but based on how your business can impact people and the planet. And so when I first decided to start Cotopaxi, I decided to register as a B Corp. And my investors, my attorney who I'd used for years told me to not do it. He said it would be a huge mistake. No investors want to invest in B Corps because they're so new. No one's really done it before. They don't want to see you giving away money before you've even made money. But I felt strongly that that's what we needed to do for this business. It was the whole reason I was starting the business. And I felt like if there was an investor that didn't want to invest in us because of our mission, they were the wrong investor for us anyways. So we became the first company to incorporate from inception as a benefit corporation and then to raise venture capital. We've been lucky that investors have continued to show a lot of interest in what we're building. It was untested and it's still untested. There's still a lot of things that we're learning. But I think the best piece of advice I got was from an executive at Oakley who actually told me that I should start, I was telling about this mission, he said, you need to integrate that do good mission into everything that you're doing. And so we do. I mean, everything from, if you order a pack on our website, you're going to get a handwritten thank you card that's written by a refugee here in Utah. When we manufacture the product, we're thinking about how it's impacting lives. So the warranty, it's a 61-year warranty, and that's the average lifespan of someone living in the developing world. So we call it the human lifespan warranty. So just reminding people that in the underdeveloped world, you don't live nearly as long as we do here. And so everything that we do, we kind of think about that mission. And so it is untested, but I think what we're proving is that it does work. The capitalism can work and that you can do good and do well at the same time. Great question.
This will be our last question. Hi, my name is Cole Rosenberg. I'm from Washington, D.C. I'm studying economics and business strategy. So you kind of touched on that a little bit already. when you have all these great ideas, these like potential entrepreneurial ideas, how do you decide which one's going to go all the way? And then when you kind of start going down that path, how do you know if like I really am going to make backpacks for Cotopaxi, or I should have gone back to like llama rides?
Yeah.
Like how do you know?
Okay. So you have to run a process. So there's a great book called Innovation Tournaments that was written by 2 professors of mine at the Wharton School, which I might recommend. But I think running a process where you first come up with ideas, the ideation. Before you start diving in too deep into any idea, use that ideation. Then you start setting filters. So before the filters, there's no bad idea. You don't have to you don't have to like justify the idea to anyone. It can be a small business. It can be a huge moonshot idea that's huge. It can be in any industry or sector. There's no limit of the ideas. And then you start filtering it. So then once you start setting the filters, you can make decisions about what am I looking to build. What kind of space do I want to be in, or how big do I want the opportunity to be? For me, when I did the baby business, we built a small business, so I really wanted to build a business that was a $100 million business or bigger. So that we took those 60 ideas that we had and we kind of cut them down and then focused on 4. And then those 4 ideas, my cousin and I, we went and spent the summer in Silicon Valley, and we just tested those 4 ideas. I took 2, he took 2, and we every single day just vetted them, tested them to see what got traction. A few of them we've realized were really, really hard ideas to execute on. And then there were a couple that we realized, hey, we can actually do this, and this is a real opportunity. And so then we ended up choosing the one, baby.com.br, that we felt had the biggest chance of success. So I think the answer is run a process. You have to be really disciplined about the process that you run. So, great question, thank you.
Thanks for your questions, and please join me one more time in thanking Davis Smith.